11:47 p.m. Sunday. You're staring at one number on your phone, $11,200. 2 years to save it, one tap to lose it. That's the part nobody tells you about your first real chunk of money. It's not exciting. It's terrifying. Because for the first time, doing nothing has a cost. It's 2026. Rent keeps climbing. Your group chat can't agree if AI is about to take everyone's job or nobody's. The only thing everyone agrees on, sitting on cash, is how you lose without noticing. So here's your fork. Door 1. An app already on your phone, an index fund, 4 taps to buy. Door 2. A property, a roof, a lock, a mailbox, something that's supposed to pay you this time. You can only walk through one. Not because the other disappears, because you only get to be 23 once, and the door you choose tonight doesn't just pick an investment. It picks the next 10 years of your life, your Sundays, your phone notifications, the kind of stress you carry, and when it shows up, this isn't stocks versus real estate. This is, which version of you do you want to meet at 35? Door 1. You buy the index fund Wednesday. Lunch break. You transfer $10,000, keep $1,200 back. Not because a finance bro told you to, but because you've been broke before and you remember exactly what it felt like. One ticker, total market index fund, 0 phone calls, 0 paperwork beyond a signature. You put your phone down and finish your sandwich like nothing happened, and then nothing happens. You wanted a feeling, a sense of I did it. Instead, by Friday, your $10,000 is worth $9,860 because the market had a quiet bad week. You made a real decision and the universe responded with a shrug. Get used to that shrug. It's the entire emotional texture of this path for the next 10 years. 3 weeks in, the market drops harder. Not a crash, just a slow grind. 9% over a month. No headline, no event you can point to. Just $900 gone a little at a time, like water evaporating off a sidewalk. You check the app every morning, then twice a day, then before bed. Then you do the thing every first-time investor does. You start reading. Big mistake. 3 experts, 3 completely different opinions, all delivered with total confidence. One says this is the start of a recession. One says this is the buying opportunity of the decade. One says they're both wrong and you should be in gold. You close 12 tabs at 1 a.m., more confused than when you opened the first one. So you do nothing. Not because you're brave, because you genuinely have no idea what the right move is, and doing nothing is the only move that doesn't require you to defend it to anyone, including yourself. That non-decision is the most important financial decision you make all year. By month 7, you're back to even. By month 13, you're up $1,650. You start adding money, $350 some months, $150 when your car eats your paycheck, sometimes $0 in months you don't talk about. The account doesn't care. It doesn't text you back, doesn't notice your inconsistency. It just compounds whatever you feed it, on whatever schedule you manage to feed it. This is the deal stocks make with you in your 20s. You're allowed to be inconsistent and the machine still works. By 26, you have $38,000 in the market. You genuinely can't tell anyone a story about how it got there because there isn't one. No big year, no lucky pick, no moment. Just 36 months of small transfers and a market that, on average, goes up more than it goes down. Now meet your control group. Your friend who started the exact same week with the exact same amount. At 24, mid-dip, he pulled everything out to cover a deposit on an apartment he could have financed another way. I'll get back in once things settle, he told himself. Things settled. He never went back. That account, left untouched, would be worth $46,000 today. He has $7,800 sitting in a savings account, earning almost nothing. The market didn't fail him. He failed the one test the market gives everyone. Wait, at 27 you get a raise, $11,000 more a year. You increase your contribution the same pay period before the extra money has a chance to learn it's yours. You never feel the raise in your day-to-day life because you never let yourself feel it. The market now takes roughly $850 a month from you, automatically, without negotiation, without emotion. Life at 30, stock path, you're 30. The account reads $84,000. You didn't grind for this number. You made 100 small, boring, slightly uncomfortable decisions and time did almost all of the actual work. Your weekends are entirely yours, fully. Nothing you own can call you at 10 p.m. There's no tenant, no leaking pipe, no inspection letter showing up the same week rent's due, no property tax bill arriving in December when you're already stretched thin. Your portfolio runs as a background process while you build the things that actually compound differently. Your career, your relationships, your skills, your flexibility is fully intact. A job offer comes through in another city. You take it because nothing you own is tying you to a zip code. If you ever wanted to quit and risk something on yourself, $84,000 sitting in a liquid account is real, accessible in under a week. That kind of accessibility has a value that never shows up in a return calculation. What you don't have is leverage. You don't control an asset worth 4 times what you put in. No tenant covering part of your monthly costs. No depreciation shielding your taxes. Your number moves with the economy and nothing else. and the only way to speed it up is contributing more of your own money and waiting. The ceiling on this path is patience, so is the floor. The entire structure top to bottom is patience, and patience is free, finite, and a lot harder than it sounds. Door 2, you buy the property, same $11,200, same 23 years old, but in 2026, $11,200 doesn't buy a building. It starts the conversation about a building. You spend the next 16 months in a version of yourself your friends find slightly exhausting. Freelance editing work on weekends, you stop going to things. You eat at home so consistently your friends start joking that you've disappeared. At 24, you have $29,500. Combined with a low down payment loan, you're shopping properties up to roughly $310,000. You find a triplex in a neighborhood your real estate agent calls transitional, which is agent speak for not nice yet but not falling apart either. $289,000. 2 of the 3 units are already rented, combining for $1,950 a month. The third, the smallest one, is empty, and you decide to live in it yourself. That's the only reason this math works at all. You run the numbers so many times your laptop battery dies faster from the spreadsheet than from anything else you use it for. At 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, you run them again. You make the offer. It's accepted, you close. 24 years old, you own a $289,000 building. $29,500 of it is yours. You have about $900 left in checking. Month 1, your tenant is 2.5 weeks late on rent. Welcome to landlording. This is what real estate teaches you in year 1 that nothing else can teach you how to function while uncomfortable on a schedule that isn't yours. Month 3, the water heater for the whole building dies, $2,400, you don't have it. It goes on a card. A tenant calls you at 10 p.m. on a Friday about a strange noise. You drive over scared because you're new at this and you don't know what's about to cost you. It's a loose vent cover. You learned it goes slowly, expensively, the difference between what a plumber costs and what a YouTube tutorial cost. You learn that a tenant who pays on time every time is worth more than one paying $80 extra a month who might not. You learn that 2 weeks of vacancy costs you more than a month of reduced rent ever would. None of this comes from a book. All of it comes from living it at 1 a.m. with a flashlight in your hand. By the end of year 1, you've built a spreadsheet that tracks every dollar, every payment, every repair, every late fee, every insurance renewal. You know your net operating income, you know your cap rate. At 25, you understand a balance sheet the way most 40-year-olds never will because yours has consequences attached to it in real time. The building, after accounting for the unit you live in as effective savings, nets you about $340 a month after every expense, including a maintenance reserve. $340 isn't retirement, but it's proof the machine works. It's money that lands in your account whether or not you clocked hours that week, and the psychological effect of that first deposit is wildly out of proportion to the dollar amount. It changes something in how you experience time. At 27, the neighborhood starts turning. A new coffee shop opens 2 blocks down, then a renovated storefront across the street. You refinance pulling out $22,000 in equity that didn't exist 3 years ago. You use it as the down payment on a second property, a fourplex in a nearby town, fully rented, $245,000. Now you control roughly $534,000 in real estate with about $96,000 of actual equity in it. The bank owns the rest, and the bank is, in effect, your silent partner, funding 82% of the asset while you keep 100% of whatever it gains. When property values rise 6% in a year, your equity doesn't grow by 6%. It grows by a multiple of that because the appreciation applies to the full asset value, not just your slice of it. This is the part most explanations get wrong. It's not complicated, it just sounds complicated. A $534,000 portfolio appreciating 6% adds about $32,000 in value. Your actual cash in the deal is $96,000. That's a 33% return on your money. Not because the properties returned 33%, but because you borrowed the rest of it. Leverage is the engine. The bank is the fuel. Your only job is not to crash the car. Life at 30. Real estate path. You're 30. Your weekends aren't entirely yours, but you've gotten efficient. Most months, the properties more or less run themselves with the occasional text, the occasional decision about a roof or a renewal. There's a low hum underneath everything, a kind of background attention the stock investor simply doesn't carry. You're never fully off. Your flexibility is reduced in ways that are easy to ignore until they're not. Moving cities isn't a decision anymore. It's a project involving a property manager or a sale or a long-distance landlord arrangement you'll regret within a year. The $96,000 in equity is real, but it isn't liquid. You can't touch it in a week. You can touch it in a few months through a refinance or a sale, and both come with costs attached. What you do have, a growing machine the bank is partially funding for you. Depreciation shielding part of your rental income from taxes, something the stock investor structurally can never access. An asset class that tends to move with inflation instead of getting quietly eaten by it. And a set of skills. Negotiation, deal analysis, contractor relationships, financing structures look that live in you, not in an account, and compound in their own direction no matter what the market does. Where the paths split was 30 to 40. At 30, the two of you look roughly similar on paper. Stock investor, $84,000 liquid, growing on autopilot. Real estate investor, $96,000 in equity across two properties, maybe $9,000 in separate savings, plus $620 a month in net cash flow. Real estate's slightly ahead on total net worth. Stocks are dramatically ahead on liquidity and freedom, but net worth at 30 barely matters. The shape of the machine you're running does. The stock machine has exactly one input: contribute more, and time does the rest. It scales automatically if your income grows, but there's no mechanism to accelerate it beyond that. You're a passenger in a vehicle that historically arrives, you just don't get to pick the speed. The real estate machine has more inputs, and that's both the magic and the trap. Force appreciation through renovation, refinance and pull equity to buy again. Raise rents as the market moves, hire a manager and buy back your weekends at a cost. More levers means more ways to win, and more ways to make a $20,000 mistake. By 35, the gap becomes visible. The stock investor, consistent, unspectacular, sits somewhere around $165,000 to $210,000, assuming steady contributions and average returns through two modest raises. The real estate investor, now on a third property, financed using equity pulled from the first two, sits at $340,000 to $420,000 in combined equity, plus a portfolio cash flowing around $1,650 a month. The leverage has compounded. The gap is real. But the stock investor used their reclaimed weekends to switch careers once, a move that added $35,000 to their annual income, money that flowed straight back into the market and quietly started closing that gap from the other direction. Freedom generated income. Income generated more investing. It's not a gap. It's two different shapes of the same climb. What nobody tells you about stocks: one day, you'll watch $50,000 or more disappear in a downturn, and in the moment, it won't feel like the market did a normal market thing. It'll feel like a verdict on your intelligence and your patience, every decision you've ever made. It isn't, but it will feel like one, and that feeling is the actual test, not the math. The people who win on this path aren't the most sophisticated analysts. They're the ones who can watch a number fall for 14 months and not move. That's a rare skill, and most people only discover whether they have it the expensive way, by selling once, at the bottom, and spending the next decade doing math on what it would be worth now if they hadn't. And then there's the boredom. There's nothing to do. That's the entire point. And also the entire problem. The human brain wasn't built to sit calmly on a good decision for 15 years. It wants to act, to adjust, to optimize, to convince you this time is different. Almost every adjustment it talks you into is a mistake. The real skill of this path is spending 2 decades quietly overriding your own instincts and calling it strategy. What nobody tells you about real estate on paper: the fourplex nets $340 a month. In reality, it nets $340 a month in the months where nothing happens, and something always eventually happens. The month the roof needs emergency work, you don't net $340. You net negative $1,800. Then you net $340 again for the next 6 months until you're back to even. The annual average is technically accurate, but you don't live in annual averages. You live month to month, and some of those months are genuinely hard in ways no spreadsheet warns you about in advance. Your reserves aren't a safety net the way savings are for the stock investor. They're operating capital. Treat them like a safety net, and your first bad month will teach you the difference the expensive way. And the ceiling, while real, has weight attached to it. Every unit you add is a relationship you're now responsible for. A person living somewhere you own, with problems that sometimes become your problems, often at inconvenient hours. Property management eventually solves this, at a cost of roughly 8 to 10% of gross rent, which quietly rewrites your cash flow math the day you bring it on. There's no version of scaling this path that's fully hands-off. There are only versions that are mostly hands-off. Know the difference before you sign anything. The real question here's the twist: only in raw historical terms, the returns on both paths aren't that far apart. Stocks have averaged roughly 10% a year over the long run. Leverage real estate, manage well, lands somewhere around 10 to 15%. Neither is guaranteed. Both demand discipline, so if the returns are this close, what's actually different? The life wrapped around the return. The stock path version of you built a life optimized for flexibility, moved cities when they wanted to, switched careers without an asset anchoring them down, had weekends that were unconditionally theirs, every single one. The asset asked for nothing but consistency and patience, and that empty space became room for everything else: career, relationships, creativity. The real estate path version of you built a life optimized for control. They can see their wealth, drive to it, negotiate it, improve it with their own 2 hands. They developed a real fluency in how money actually moves: debt, equity, cash flow, leverage. and that fluency changed how they think about every financial decision that came after this one. They traded some freedom for more mechanisms. Neither trade is better. They're just different bets on what you're built to carry. So, which door? You're still 23. You still have $11,200. You're still standing at the same fork. Here's the truth, with no spin. If you're emotionally steady, if you can watch a number drop and genuinely not react, and your career is going to grow your income over the next decade regardless, stocks will quietly build you a real life with almost zero operational weight. You may not out-earn the real estate path, but you'll build genuine wealth, and you'll never take a 10 p.m. call about event cover. If you're action-oriented, if complexity doesn't scare you, if you're willing to actually learn a craft and not just read about one, and you want a mechanism with more levers, more ways to accelerate, real estate will reward you in proportion to both the risk you took and the work you put in. And here's what's true on both sides, equally. The worst outcome was never picking the wrong door. It's picking either door and treating it casually. Buying the index fund and panic selling on the first real correction. Buying the property with zero reserves and dumping it in year 2 the moment the expenses feel like too much. Both paths punish the person who wants the outcome without the commitment. Both paths reward the person who commits and stays, even when staying is boring or expensive, or both. The door you choose tonight doesn't determine your outcome. Your relationship with discomfort does. Your ability to sit with a bad month, a red screen, a 2 a.m. call about a problem you didn't ask for. That's the variable underneath everything. The money is just the scoreboard. The $11,200 is sitting there either way. The machine opens tomorrow morning. It takes whoever shows up.